the story so far. We've made it through really the most interesting part of the game. We don't know who's going to win. We could make some pretty good guesses, I would say. This is a fairly nice holding with this idea of, he's got, 3, 4, 5, 6 shares, plus a minor that is going to last the game. And the minor is worth more than a share. Whereas we look over here, we got 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 shares with some pretty decent trains, the opportunity to maybe grow. Here, he's not in good shape with only 5 shares of some stuff that really doesn't have a lot of growth opportunity. He took a big hit, and I'm not sure what it was. Because he's not the guy who lost a railway. That's this guy who has 4, 5, 6, 7 shares. Not a lot of growth on his company. In fact, none whatsoever. But some investment capabilities and reasonable money. Everybody's kind of got reasonable money at this point. He's kind of the weakest in cash. So he had to shift a train. He's going to be playing, so he might fall. Well, he might stay even with everyone else. This is one of the most impressive rail setups. And so this is kind of where the challenge is. I think we're looking at one of these two as the traditional holding, right? Well, none of them are traditional. This is the most traditional. Two major corporations, a reasonable amount of certificates in fairly good shape. This guy, a major and a minor with a reasonable amount of certificates in play. And then we go up to here, where he only has 2, 4, 6 shares, which puts him behind other people. But one of those shares is going to be in a corporation that has a double permanent train. Now, this isn't like, it's kind of hard for me to face because I'm not looking at what I usually would be looking at in those kind of circumstances. I would say, oh, this guy's in great shape, even though he's got less total share value or whatever at this point. He's got a really powerful corporation, but he's only got 30% of it. And that's kind of the thing. Whatever your corporation is, you don't have much of. He's got 40%, but his isn't that impressive, right? And that's why the minor is so impressive, because it's basically, I'm going to get 50% of the earnings, but no stock value off that, which makes up for a lot, I got to tell you, because the stock values are climbing quite high, although they're going to slow down a little bit. But we can see if we're running, eventual runs of at least 30, people are going to hit around here before they hit a break wall. And that big company, that thing's going to be putting out, the NY and H&H, that thing's going to be putting out, actually it's the NYC, is going to be putting out double payouts for a long time. Because he's hitting 28, he's going to be hitting 56. He can make it to the end with that. So yeah, it's hard for me to judge. Unlike most XX games where I can make a pretty clear idea at this point in the game, who's likely in the lead. I've got 3 people that I think are relative contenders, and there's enough weirdness there's enough that I don't know about how this game plays out and how long it's going to take and how much money these runs are going to make over the long term. And the certificate portfolios are just so different from what I'm used to seeing. In a lot of ways, it brings you to kind of that, early in a game, in a new XX game, you start having, you might have difficulty and might not be able to assess the situation particularly well. But usually by this point in the game, you have a pretty fair clue of what the relative valuations are and where people are sitting. And it feels very strange to me to be in this position where I really don't know. I think those 3 players are all in the running, but That may be because I have a much wider grasp, a much wider uncertainty window of how well they're each going to do. I can look at others like this guy and say, well, he's doing much like he is with a lot less shares and not making all that much money. It might open up a little bit, but it's not going to get that much better. So he's going to fall behind. And I look at this guy and I say, yeah, again, sure, I have as many shares as anyone else, and that may actually be the issue. That may be enough. The fact that I have 7 shares and he has 7 shares, that may be the equivalent to one another. And then if it comes down to it, well, I have a little bit more cash, which means I can invest in better stuff. Also, these companies being held on very low numbers of shares, those can be stolen. If somebody is holding, so let's take a look at him. He's got a lot of shares, so he's not a great idea. This is the great idea. If he was holding something that was worthwhile, maybe the Canadian National is, he's got 2 shares of each of his companies and 1 extra share. So all he has to defend himself is, the price, the valuation of one of these shares, and, well, some cash on hand that is going to turn out to be enough to defend at least one of the 2 companies. But what if one gets attacked and then someone else goes after the other one? He may have one of his 2 companies shaken loose. Now, the problem is the D&H probably isn't that worthwhile. Because nobody's running up against certificate limits or anything like that, we're not in a position where the presidency itself is all that valuable at this point in the game. At this point in the game, in most XXs, your portfolios are maybe not full, but they're getting close to full, right? On the other hand, there's a lot of money being generated. These runs are not small. There's a lot of high-value cities. So I don't know. Anyway, we'll come in with operating round 2, probably, I don't know. My guess is probably on Sunday. It's going to be a while, because it's Thursday. There's some exciting stuff happening in Raid, and then tomorrow's Friday. I go dancing. Saturday I recover. Might make it down at some point on Saturday. Yeah. Turns out there's not much for me to do in Raid. I could go to sleep, but it's a little early. I'd wake up at a icky time. I might end up coming down here or whatever. It's like 2:30 in the morning, which is not my normal sleepy time. So I'm going to try to push this operating round through, and yeah, I hope that I'll talk a little less than on the last one. With a truncated run, the Hudson here is able to make a 20 run on only a 5, and I don't think, yeah, I'm hitting a doinker too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Conceivably, I might be able to break out and get somewhere, but it's going to take a lot of effort, and it's probably not worth trying to flip trains again. Obviously, the B&M could grab this out, but I'm making $100 in pocket each time, and this thing, well, it might get some capability to lay track that I otherwise wouldn't. And right away we spoil my let's speak less. Onward. They got cut, and I'm trying to use my double track lay to get them into positions where maybe there's an entryway getting down into New York again, or into New Haven again, maybe New York. My train ain't going to take me that far very easily. Still end up able to run a 6 train, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and actually made $1 more this time, but I think we're probably pretty close to limit unless we can break in. Remember, they went so early, they didn't get as much money from some of the locations that they can hit now. And it's not that big a deal. This is a 60. I'm not going to be able to pass through that. It's a $10 increase if I can hit New Haven instead. it's huge if we blast our way through and can hit New York. That becomes a big $100 space, but that's a lot of work, and I don't have money, so somebody else will have to do the work. And the CV is a bell ringer, 180. 49 a share, and that with 3 certificates already in here gave me enough cash to pull these in. Unfortunately, there's no way to prevent people from buying them, so they're at 180 each. That's what I just blew out of my stash. I don't need to build track. Maybe I'll build something for the Providence. I don't think it needs track either. All I need is for dots not to happen, because right now I'm running through some of the best track that there is, basically, with a nice big train. And if the money just keeps accumulating, well, right now, see, if people buy these up, I am, unless they dump them in there, I have the potential to get another 360 from this. So this is like $600 right here. It won't be, because I won't get another run. If this had happened in the earlier operating round, I'd get a couple of runs with it, but I was blank on the first one. Obviously, people would have bought shares of it if it was going to have an 8 train on the first operating round. But as it stands, although there wasn't a hell of a lot of money, but as it stands, I paid 180 per. They're probably going to get taken away from me at that same price. But when they're in people's hands and not in here, that means on my operating round, I might be able to release enough shares at 120 each down here at the par value to be able to buy myself a second 8 train and double that amount. Wow. A couple more, the B&M and the D&H, both, again, with runs in the 30s. Runs in the 30s are big. Runs in the 50s are huge, okay? Runs that could hit 98 are about as large as I've seen in any game. I saw in 1830 things like that happening with a diesel when basically the whole board was covered was transversible by track. Like he could hit all kinds of cities with it, and it was an obscene situation. It cost a lot to do. I don't know if it won him the game, but serious like effort to get to that. I feel like here it's been a lot easier to get to positions where, hey, maybe I can buy another one of them pretty easily. And that's the thing. If people don't buy any of his shares, he can't get rid of as many shares, right? That 50% was in here. He's pulled shares out to get more value, but if everybody just ignores the incredible worth of this corporation, well, he's got lots of room for more of them, so he'll buy them up. But yeah, there's a limit to what can be in the bank pool. So if nobody buys them, I'm not going to be making the kind of money I wanted. But if nobody buys them, I'll be making money on this, and at some point or another, I'll be able to release. And in addition, I'm able to just buy them out of here. And no matter what, it costs 180 each, whether they're IPO or otherwise. It's just how much the company gets out of it. But yeah, the money that's accumulating on other companies. I mean, the Boston and Maine here, $1, $2, $3, $4, $500 already. There aren't. Oh, I ought to consider buying some of my shares, right? Yeah, I might as well, because I'm not buying a train right now. I might as well. I'm not gonna buy a train next time either, because I'm only making like 60 something in here. But yeah, the cash starts accumulating really quickly, And if the game lasts long enough, and I have a feeling it might last long enough, people are going to just fall into additional trains. Because I don't know. If people are making enough cash, they'll start buying some of the shares, and certificate limit will come into play and stuff like that, and the money won't accumulate as much on all the companies, but some of them it will. Check as the NYC played this. This is a clever play. It puts the run into Springfield. Maybe I get Springfield, maybe I don't. But other choices that I had coming down directly like this might not get me into Springfield. This guarantees there's only one replacement track for this, and I needed to make sure that the game didn't have something else. But it doesn't have additional brown track, so I should have felt pretty safe. So I'd be able to take the only replacement track is a brown one that adds a bar going across, which then gives me options to go this way or this way, and opens up more opportunities for getting out. Now, it might not be trivial to get out, but let's leave that alone. I don't know if I want to. We'll see how much I make. I haven't calculated my run, which is probably pretty fixed at this point. At 1, 2, 3. I don't like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is, I guess, the best run that I can do. So sort of a perceived wisdom, and maybe it's still there. It's still there because it's going to happen right now. I almost forgot. How much? There's no stock over here, so I'm going to only pay $1 to him, unless he wants to buy shares. I could give him $120. He could redeem a share, and then start getting some cash. I think I'm better off. Yeah, I'm better off maybe doing that. The problem is that I kind of want to keep the money here, which is problematic. So what if I do this? What am I buying? Yeah, I'm buying a 5 train. What if I do this? That's 120. I'll give him another $1 there. And I'll give him this 25 as well. Just as some starter cash, whatever. I don't know. I don't think much is going to come out of... Nah, I'm going to leave this here. And I buy a second 5 train. And what that means is I'm making 30 right now. I'm going to be making 60 on my next run, which immediately makes the NYC look really good. So yeah, what I was going to say was, well, the received wisdom that the NYC was going to be good doesn't seem to be there. Yeah, I forgot I'm buying that train. Maybe one of the investors reminded me. 30's not bad, but it's also nothing special to write home about. When we look at these guys, we're making more, but it's the fact that there were 2 trains on those 2 companies, and people want to hold both of the companies basically in the hopes of getting the most, whatever the most money is, getting one shot at it. If he's split 50-50 between them, us having both an NYNH and an NYC isn't that terrible either. We get to keep in the race with whatever he's doing. The question for me is, Boston. Maybe I don't want all this cash. I'll leave this cash here. I think I'm gonna, actually, no, I do it like this. I get this much cash. I don't know, that may be less than he had to begin with. No, because he did not have enough for a token. So I give him enough for a token and $1 to buy a train if I need to evacuate one of these 5Es. Although that's just problematic. That means I'll be running 2 double 5s instead of the 8s that I'm paying for. But I don't think I'm going to get a second 8 on here anytime in the future, which means that putting this money here, putting only that amount of money, gives me a chance to maybe manipulate and buy an 8 on here where I have stocks already, etc. And it still leaves me with enough money for what I want to do right now, which is buy a token in Boston and cut this little bonus off of everybody who's been picking it up, and prevent myself from being cut. So screwed up. I counted as though I had this track. I don't. The NYC was running a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as far as I can see. What else could I have done? Oh yeah, no, I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, yeah, I made the 30 a share. I actually might have been able to make more last time because of that, but we're not going back that far. But I'm looking at the NYNH and trying to see, well, is there a track that I can lay that helps the NYC? Because my track will be fixed, as it were. I don't see anything that's going to change. I'm going to be running through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I have the dot, and I don't have to worry about anything after that. So I'll probably hook this up for the NYC just so that they get an extra $10 there. I don't know what else. Are they interested in coming out this way? Ooh. I'm not interested in spending money for it, but I might be interested in getting them out this way. More interested than the straight track? No, I think a lot of people are interested in this. So I'll lay this track. I'm looking to see if there's a second track that I want to lay. I can't put in these. Those are yellow spaces, so they count as upgrades. I could lay bogus track like curving around here, but it doesn't really do much. It just is a waste of effort as far as I'm concerned. I don't get up there. So yeah, that's all I'm laying. I pay my money, and that's gonna hurt some people. Not a lot. When you have a devastating cut, it's very rare. But boy, does it hurt someone. Like, it usually hurts more than one person too, because like quite often it's a case where like all the railways are using that and they kind of all come to an agreement not to screw. I don't know. I never come to those agreements when I'm playing solo. I did come to such an agreement, and I don't think it would have happened in like a 4-player game or something, but it was, or greater. It was 1846. There was a key location, and me and one other guy, 2/3 of the players, each had 2 companies that ran through a place that had like 1 extra space or something like that. And any of us could have cut it so that it hurt, so that one of our companies was okay and the other company was hurt by it. Like there was one open space, and we each had 2 companies running through that one open space. And it was just a case of, look, let's come to an agreement that I didn't suggest it. I never suggest anything in 18xx. But sometimes I'll agree to things. It was, look, this is not in anybody's best interest if any of us dot it. I'm going to dot it right now, though, unless you agree not to dot it. And I'm like, I looked at my situation and I'm like, I'm not going to dot it. You know, we may have both been racing for the dot there, but it would have caused each of us to lose. It would have caused even the winner of the dot to lose ground to the other player. And as it was, I think we were worried about him doing better. I don't know. I don't remember very well. Yeah, that big 8 train, just like that big 8 train. Well, this one does a little bit better. You got those dots. I don't know. I don't know why. There was an upgrade or something, perhaps. But that gets a little bell ringer at 50. Not as impressive as what we, know that this can reach or whatever, right? But, if that train doesn't get reached, and with runs this big, geez, the bank is going to run out. I don't know how quickly. I don't know how quickly these are going to turn into, this feels like it can turn into a train pretty fast if people buy up shares, i.e. if shares don't end up in the bank pool. I think it was the NYC's action that was this thing. It screws the CNR up completely. The straight line across, I would have hooked in here, gotten into here, put a dot somewhere. It probably has to be here to allow me more playing room. Those dots are beginning to fill up. Remember, I said somebody had no problem. Well, I think it was the Central Vermont. They're starting to look like they're having a problem. It's getting cluttered. Too many people with money. But yeah, I would have dropped a dot in somewhere and secured a run going across. But now, I don't see an easy way. I can build in here, but there's no trivial connection there because these are, no, it turns into like an X or something like that. So yeah, it would allow me in there. This one, I could go back here or here, but going this way would be bad. Remember, you can't add any entrances to those. It's kind of the key to understanding how the brown tiles work. So I think I want to burn into Springfield rather than lay this piece of track. And the problem with that, of course, is then Springfield's another dot that's available. There's 2 there, which is a little different. Somebody could start this, but you'd need a train for it. And unless you're in a situation where you have an extra 5 train, which might happen. Like if this guy collects up enough cash, he has an extra 5 train. I would rather have had an 8 and a 6 or whatever on it, but maybe it'll work, Maybe starting a minor will work late in the game. Neat. It's like I was kind of mistaken. There's a lot going on, which is why I keep coming back. CNR, yeah, I mean, it was running 29 before. Now it's running 30 and a little upgrade. It was locked in before. I thought it got worse locked out somehow, but I don't think so. I mean, there's stuff like this that, yeah, no, I can't get by this. At one point or another, that might have been open or whatever. But I upgraded here. Had to spend some money. Got a decent run at 30, right? I don't want to buy a dot here in Springfield because I don't have a shit ton of money. I may have to blast through this. Maybe. I don't know. May have to go up here or something. And then there's always the opening here, which will be available, right? And I don't think I want to buy shares. I don't see myself getting I don't see myself getting $800 worth of train. So it's better to keep blasting money available. In fact, I could release more one more if I wanted to, but I have plenty of money. It's just it would cost me 145, and that would put me to where I couldn't blast through the mountain and put a dot at the same time, which is basically what I think I want to do. I think I want this dot, and I want to make it through the mountain. And, I'm hitting a lot of doinkers. This one. I'm actually scoring them, but still not that far behind everyone because I got such a big train. We close things up with Providence and Worcester, which built this. Not something it really needs. Its track's been cut. It was using that Portland thing, and it dropped down to $30 a share from 32. Not a major loss, but it's, at the bottom of the ranking now. And some cash in here. I don't really know that I want to invest or whatever. Again, it would leave me short on cash. I've got a big dot that I could play. I got some danger with that dot, though. Like I thought, why don't I just play it here, right? Well, problem is, I think the Central Vermont is using that, right? It's coming up and through here, and I wouldn't want to lose, or maybe up through here, I don't know. I think it's coming through here, but I wouldn't want to lose some of those cities. And if I put a dot in there, that opens it up for one other company to close it down. And there are other companies with a dot over there. The Delaware and Hudson, the New York Central, the Canadian National, all of them could do that. Now, the question is, okay, this guy would do it if he can get both dots, maybe. The D&H doesn't really need this part of his run, I think. 1, 2. He's more interested in this space, but if you take this space, then this is a workaround. Yeah, because he's trying to get, I think, from here up to there. And that's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 run. The Canadian National is hoping to break through up here, and we would probably the Canadian National would take this dot. But if the Providence and Worcester takes this one, and that would cut a significant amount off this Central Vermont. Now, is that a big deal? I don't know. It's really hard to tell, because it's like, look, those shares are going to probably end up spread all over the place. At which point, maybe I do cut it and make it not so valuable, even if I have a share on everyone else. Maybe it's worth ditching it just for the damage that I do to other companies. It's not like the Providence and Worcester needs this, though, at all. They're running 1, 2, 3, skip Cape Cod, or skip here, 4, 5 up to there, and I don't see how that's going to improve by any kind of track being up here. And this outlet doesn't help anyone except maybe the B&M. But the B&M's got a pretty small train too, and since they're hitting up here, they probably are not interested in any of this. The only way they would be interested is if it means that they hit New York, and maybe it's possible. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That may be worth more than what they're running right now. So they may actually get some advantage out of this track that I just built. But they weren't thinking along those lines at all. And that gets us to the end of the operating round. Again, mergers no, stock round. I am definitely stopping here. I'm tired. And when I'm tired, I either want to eat or sleep. And I have eaten too much already today. Friday around noonish, and let's get the stock round going. At the very least, I gotta take a nap. I woke up a little too early, but that's okay. I think this is mainly a point where people make their decisions and fill out their portfolios. Again, we're kind of in that tail end, the late game. Hard parts of this of any 18XX is evaluating. I mean, look, early in the game, it's almost impossible to make any kind of evaluation. Of how well a stock is going to do. But at this point in the game, you have a pretty good idea and can actually do so. And that makes it harder because you can actually figure it out. You can't just go on guts anymore. So I'm trying to look, hey, the New York Central, great stock. And if I had, great with its double train, it's going to be making twice what it makes here, 60 bucks, best income of anything, best stock, right? Well, it cost me 180 bucks to buy one of those. Even though there's ones in the initial offering, it still cost me 180 bucks. And that 180 bucks means that, for a little bit less, I could get something that only makes 50 a run, but also because of the way the flat stock market works. Now, 50, 60 a run, they're unlimited how far they can go. But there might be a limitation to how far a high-valued company can go. So you got to kind of balance all those things. I'm not going to do an absolute calculation. I feel like that's unreasonable. Certainly, I wouldn't do it sitting at a table with people. I'd be actually almost more tempted under those circumstances because I don't have to run 5 different players. But yeah, it's like, look, I can make a decision here. These guys are going to go up by 2, that's 40. These guys are going to go up by 2, that's 35. So it comes down to, what can I hold? What do I want to buy? What's going to go quickly? I don't have a lot of cash, which is why it's a real crimping. Like, I might be able to buy more shares, and this is really where it comes down to. So I have 345, 355, 360 bucks. That could get me 2 of these. It can't get me 3 of these. So the NYC is a good option. You need to sell out your shares, sitting directly before the NYC president. This guy also is going to buy one. That eats up the ones from the bank pool. The initial offering, the only big deal with those is that they're going to generate $100 more revenue or more cash in the treasury. I don't know what that $100 is useful for, to tell you the truth. It's going to be really hard to shift trains or anything like that. I could end up with double fives on both companies at sort of the best of circumstances if I end up with a humongous amount of cash in there. And that probably is an advantage, but it's a big cost for it. But anyway, I mean, the cost is just a matter of how much time does it take for it to happen. You could make an argument, hey, you don't want to hold 2 shares of a company. Yeah, that's a general rule in 18xx, but at this point in the game, first of all, I'm in the best position to do so. And he's got 3 trains on 2 companies. It's not going to be that terrible. And he's going to cut his own throat more than mine. Buys another share. There's good reasons for that, to protect your presidency, whatever. It's probably not that big a deal because he doesn't have a lot of shares total. But whatever. He had a lot of cash though, so whatever. Anyway, I don't know. I feel like a lot of times I throw things away without explaining them, and it's because sometimes it's just like, look, I know that I over-explain if I'm allowed to, and I never want to make people feel like I'm doing that and talking down to them, but on the other hand, I also know that I have a very, very strong tendency to skip steps and just assume too much of people, that they're like inside my brain and following what I say. That's sort of the argument, for the other side. What my side of it being, how I am overly critical of everyone, especially myself, but everyone, is that, well, it's fucking obvious, what I'm about to say. So I don't know, man. Anyway. Interesting position, because I have a different amount of money here by a significant amount. I have 460. 460 is only 2 of these, but I still have $100, but there's not much I can do with $100. Whereas 3 of these comes out to about 420. So if I buy lower valued shares, now here's the thing though, I may be holding shares that are not that good that I want to dump. So this is where it becomes really, really hard to figure out how much is X worth, right? Do I just want to buy the NYC because it's the best share out there and I'll figure out what to do later? I've got things that are pretty iffy. The Boston and Maine, high value, not particularly high runs. The Boston and Albany, similar circumstances. And me selling them is not going to change their stock value. And presidents. So this is why this game is so static at the end. Actually, is there's no incentive for players to dump lots of shares to play with the stock market. So opportunities don't open up. You generally are going to be able to hold your company unless something is unattractive, relatively speaking, in which case everybody will dump the stock for it, right? Who can? I'm looking at this and saying, I do not want to hold this Boston and Albany, so I think I'll sell that because it's already got 40% in the bank pool. That looks like a good choice to get rid of. Do I want to get rid of lots of companies? Like, do I want to get rid of the B&M? It's an interesting question. You know, will I have not enough opportunities to buy things if I do that? It's hard to tell, so I'm just going to sell the Boston and Albany for $200 and buy an NYC for $180. Now, in the net term of things, that gets me $20, but it also does put another $100 in here because another IPO went. And it's just like, you have to make those kinds of calculations quite a bit in this stage of the game. Like, maybe I should have sold this because maybe they'll get all sold out. Well, there's only one other in players' hands. So I think the B&M is pretty safe. It's actually got a shitload of money on it, though, which is interesting. It might be getting another trade. It's got 360, because these are not IPOs. 485. It's got $600 on it. I got another 150 here. If I release those shares on the next operating round, I think I get to buy a second train going into OR2, which will give it a double 5. So it's actually not a bad company. Maybe. It's hard to tell, you know? Now, in the same kind of position, he's got a shit ton of cash. Is he sitting on anything that's not good? No. He has an NYNH, which is running really well. But it's also $145, which would leave me not investing all my money. These are 15 each. We're starting to go up to 20s here. I think I'm going to buy a CV. It makes almost as much as the NYNH, and it's got a room for a growth, and it fits my cash perspective a little bit better. And that'll be my last share. If people want to take one of these, they can. Wouldn't really hurt me. I'd still have the share value and the shares, and I have tons of portfolio. There's not really a reason to value president certificates as much, at least the way this played out. Like, nobody's up near certificate limit, and I actually think the bank may break before most people get there. Buying a CV, either way I have to pay $180. I chose to buy an IPO share. Why? It's an interesting question, to tell you the truth. These shares are going to go up in value. After that first run, that can be released at $220 instead of $180, which gives him more money and makes my share more valuable. Now, it makes his 2 shares more valuable too, and he's ahead of me. But this is a situation where this player is saying, you know what? I'm not going to overtake the first place player. I'm probably playing for fourth place at this point. I just want to beat out the other fourth place player. This comes into the whole concept of, look, when you're in a situation in a game that, orders placement, and you can't win anymore, should you do your best? What is in your best interests as a player? And I mean, this is all philosophy of, game players or whatever, or the psychology to some extent. Is it better to get closer to the leader, in which case I would want to minimize his advantage off of me buying this? Or is it better to come in a higher place? Now, given that most people, both of them work the same. If you're in like first and second, right? You want to make sure that you stay in the highest position and staying in the highest position is also staying ahead of the person nearest you and whatnot. So there's no conflict when you're up at the top and you're playing for first place. But when you're playing at the bottom of the stack, there are other options. And then there's another option entirely, one that's like, how high a score can I get? In 18xx, I feel like that's a meaningless concept. Like, if you get the highest valuation in a given game of 18xx that you've ever gotten, all that means is that the bank ended up, fiddling around at a weird state. Probably everybody has high scores, right? Things like the highest run that you've ever gotten, that's impressive, right? But things along the lines of, how much total cash value did I have at the end of the game? That's sort of a random factor. It really doesn't say anything about how well you did. Now, in other games, it does show something interesting. For example, I don't know if I can find it here. I'm thinking Rail Baron, and it's got to be up. It's got to be down here, but I don't know where I have it tucked away. But anyway, in Rail Baron, there's this rover mode, and you can like knock somebody down, or or the threat of it can keep somebody from declaring that they're going to win the game. And basically, you have an opportunity to try to strike a player who has declared they're going to win the game. And that can create a situation that is also kind of random, but it's of more interest than when did the bank break? Did the bank break late in an operating round? And stuff like that. There's something interesting that it says about play of the game and what may have happened in a Rail Baron game if you get the highest score. And by the way, I know somebody who got at least at the time, the highest score. Well, I don't know him anymore because he's dead, but the highest score ever in a World Board Gaming Championship Rail Baron game, and they made a big deal out of it. They give a plaque every year for it, but I think he got the highest ever. I don't know. Anyway, I'm sure it may have been superseded. It's just a matter of but it was because there were multiple rover plays going on in it, and that delayed the game out to the point where, he and other people in the game too, so it's kind of similar to this, were collecting up large quantities of cash. Very defensive game. You don't usually see that I'm used to at the levels of play that I'm used to, but so maybe there's more to Rail Baron than I think. Where the hell am I? I just did this. See a follow-up, same play there. He bought an NYNH. His money is such that made more sense to buy the lower valued stock, and it's also one of his own companies, which brought me to thinking about another situation, which is that the amount of investor spread we're going to have here means that handing out earnings is actually going to be more painful than in most XX games, because normally somebody's holding 60% of their company, maybe 50%. Everybody else has like one, maybe two. But here we've got situations where, I don't know, nobody's got three of anything. At least there's that, but I have to paw for money for more players because it's all spread out. There's only 5 players, which is also part of it. That it's not as, that it's, there's less players to spread out among for whatever. He also bought a Central Vermont. We've cleared out those. Another question would have been, hey, do you want to buy these? The effect is essentially the same as buying the IPOs for buying those. So it doesn't really make a difference. The real question is, do you want to take these away from him? That might make more money. And both the players who bought the CV did not want to take those away. I could have rolled dice to see if he had the same thoughts as he did. I don't know. It doesn't really matter because they both have a share, so the second guy probably shouldn't have. This guy did buy an IPO. He definitely doesn't want to hurt his company. We come to him. He would love to sell his Boston and Albany at this point, but there are no spaces left for that to happen. So I am pretty much left with $315. 315 bucks. This comes out to $325, so I can't buy a CV and still get 2 certificates. So now I'm going to look at other things, and honestly the NYNH is appealing. My own Boston and Maine is not unappealing. Although it's not making a hell of a lot right now, it will make more, but it'll only make more in maybe an operating round this time around. So I'm going to focus on the NYNHs instead. He's in an interesting place because I'm sitting on a Boston and Maine that I don't think is terribly valuable. It's okay, but for the arguments given, it's 180 bucks. That's enough I could get a Central Vermont for it and still have the cash that I have on hand, which is enough to buy something else. But there are a bunch of Central Vermonts open. There's only one NYNH open. So I think I buy that now anyway. This guy, perennially in last place, which has given him more opportunities essentially because he's passing earlier, to get the whale. In last place in terms of money. Probably in last place as well, though, at this point. President of NYC, NYNH, has enough money to buy one of the cheap guys. There's no more NYNHs. I would have loved to have gotten another one. Thought I was going to, but it seemed to have sparked a buyout. Which means I'm left with 2 bad choices. Providence and Worcester, and the Canadian National. And they both produce the same money. I think the Canadian National has room to grow, so we'll buy that. Further choice that this game has, I bought it from here. It kind of doesn't matter because he could release a share into there, but I feel like giving him more cash to buy more of these is going to improve his chances to grow. I'm not really worried about him catching me. If I was this guy, maybe I'd be worried. So I buy an IPO share, which I think gives him a little bit more flexibility with his money to do better things. Again, there's more decision on the stock purchases in this one than in, well, there's different decision because I'm looking at 1830 and like you do all kind of weird shit with the stocks, right? Here it's not so much that. Here it's which stock do I want to have and hold at least for this set of rounds and everything. But that decision making feels like it's more complicated. You have this additional layer of which type of shares you want to buy, what you want to do to the company, etc. But you're missing all that manipulation gamery. And I don't know, I kind of like this, but I also kind of miss the sheer chaos that the stock manipulation throws the game into, where I feel like in this game it's very easy to predict where the trains are going to end up comparatively. In 1830, that is not an easy job because people can step in and throw monkeys at you with wrenches. Another interesting case. So CV is the best moneymaker. We've all kind of agreed to that, right? That's out there. But I have enough money to buy 2 of these lesser shares that may not be as good. However, I'm running the CV. Do I want to get money in there? Well, I don't want to take the IPO shares, that's for sure. These shares won't generate any additional money for my corporation. So I don't really want to take, I don't care to take them. Like, I'm at the, either way, I'm at the, let's get the best investment, and I think the best investment is to buy the Canadian Nationals. Do I want to do the same thing? Yeah, it seems to make sense to buy the IPO shares and give him more cash to play around with. However, makes the opposite decision, buying a share out of the bank pool, because I look at the situation and the person I'm competing with has a chance to buy 2 of those. I would rather buy, I don't think it makes a hell of a lot of difference, but I would rather buy and limit the choices of the CNR because he's going to hold an extra certificate of it. For whatever that matters. The real indication is not how poor you are, but how rich the guy before you is. And what that's meant is that this guy has been relatively rich and able to make a lot of stock moves, which has given him the whale each time. That has shifted over here. And that's kind of an indication that of first place is how much stock movement you make. It depends on the game again. In 1830, there's so many reasons to make crazy stock moves, to shift stuff around and everything, that quite often the disruptive player who may not be winning the game, who probably isn't, but sometimes is the person who's making all the stock moves. In a game that's more static, I feel like we're actually seeing a shift of what was first place moving over. Now, we don't know for sure because, again, this is a really nice setup. This may end up a lot better than you think, but he's only holding 20%. Somebody else is holding the same 20% of his company. So, yeah. But this has got an opportunity to move up. This has an opportunity to move up. Nothing's finalized. It's just, I think at this point, we've had a shift. And let's count shares. As an example, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, call it 10. We are getting close. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. About equal shares. This one's not gaining stock value, but it does produce relatively good money. But that relatively good money has been reduced in value because the corporations are starting to a share from a corporation that makes 60 a share. What is this going to make a share? Well, it could well be making 150 a share if it's running in this kind of range, right? So that's not bad. It may be it's probably a little less because he doesn't have the dots and whatnot. But it still is making, I think, better cash than the corporations are. But when the corporations start making 100 a share, close to it, when some of them are doing that, then corporate shares are definitely way higher because this thing can only run a single train. It only has a single dot. It's going to be limited as to how big its income can get, unless it's a very odd map. I know I need to go to sleep, right? But I so want to just play. Let's do an operating round. To show you what the Hudson is doing, it was able to make a 20 run, which means all I get is 100 and 100. But compare that to a certificate, and it's making about twice what a certificate would. However, if these can make, I don't know. Nothing's making that kind of money yet, is it? Yeah. We got things up near 50. Yeah. So if you add a 50 run and 40 share value, you get about what that's making. So that's making as good as any share in the game right now, still. And it's trying to break out and get to New York. It's not going to do it right away. Actually, its next track lay, it looks like it's going to be unstoppable to get to New York. But it's trying to get around this is basically the issue. It's also knowing my audience, right? So it's like, if you're here watching this game, you probably know at least as much about XX in general as I do, right? Or else you're just along for the ride because you like my videos and, you know, whatever, you fall asleep to them or something. I don't know. But being someone who does that with other videos, do I need to point out that he's trying to get around this? Well, maybe, because it's not so obvious what's going on. If I don't highlight something on the map that's visually obvious to me, it may not be obvious, you know, to you as a listener or whatever. So I don't mind that, but I'm still like stuck on this. Wow, am I saying too simple a thing here? It feels like that's not, but then other places I probably skip connections that really need to be made. Okay, that gets us to the corpse. With the breakthrough here, I'm able to run a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and still increase my value. My value was going to get decreased because of the cuts that were made, but now it's gone up to 35. Those places where this track I really want to lay for another company. And this is where it gets you into this kind of trouble. And I can't. The CV takes a look at the Providence and Worcester and what it would like to do. Right now, it can run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I can do that, and it's a good run. But if I could avoid some of these $40 cities, one of them, say, I could hit a different $40 city. Okay, I guess there's no real great deal. What I was looking at was, oh, I want to build the bow and arrow here. Okay, but I don't want to spend the blasting money, right? I want to, because I need the cash off this CV. I want to build the bow and arrow. Okay, well, I can't just put that down, by which I mean this track, because it doesn't actually extend any of my track. So then what I was looking at was, okay, well then what I want to do is build the wide curve coming here. One of these pieces in there. But again, it doesn't extend any actual track that the CV can run on. So it's an illegal track play. And you got to be careful about stuff like that, because sometimes people won't be thinking in those terms. Right? That's a peculiar rule that, like, it feels like, hey, I can get to that track, I should be able to lay it, and it's extending track, but it's not extending track. Like, the bow and arrow is easy to see, but this one not so much, because it's extending track that I don't actually reach. There's no CV token that can get to it, so it's a little bit more subtle in some ways. I'm having a real hard time finding anything that is going to help the PNR, so, or the PNW, so I think I'll just not lay track, because I don't want to fuck anything up. I don't want to use up pieces that I may need or whatever. Like I said, it's got a fairly resilient track, but there are some dots that could hurt it, that could show up. But it makes its big 49 run again. That's still there. And then after collecting almost $150 off the run, I'm selling 2 of these for $440, which now has enough money to buy the 8 train. I can't do it now because reissuing stock happens last in your turn. You have to plan for the next turn. Doesn't feel too bad right here. In some cases, it feels horrible. Like maintaining cash reserves is more important than keeping the stocks in some cases. But yeah, and that'll put me to the B&M. Yeah, still able to produce double, right? Up until I get here. And by the time I get there, or by next turn, next turn I'll be here. And by the time I get there, because I'll make it double again, by the time I get there, I'll have 2 8 trains, and I'll be making enough that I can double move each time. So the CV is going to make a run for it. We may actually not break the bank, but hit 500. It's going to be a tight race there. There's a lot of big money makers out there, though. B&M, B&M makes its lousy little 32 run, which only moves it forward 1. But I release $600 worth of shares and get myself a big pile of money. That's another 8 train coming out. Wow. And this is happening on full runs and whatnot because of the power. So I thought that this mechanism of redeeming shares would not be very effective. It is incredibly effective because you can buy the shares. You can redeem the shares on 1 turn. Now you have to do that. You can do that at any point in the turn, but you can only reissue after you buy trains. So, but the point is, I can redeem the shares after I make my run. Sure, the value's gone up, but now I have cash. And then after I make my next run, whatever I gain, I make that extra money, and then I re-release. So as long as the bank pool's not full, I can do a lot of playing with that. I'm holding a share. The reason, hey, I may want to blast or whatever. There's no reason to release more shares than you're going to need, unless you don't know what you're going to need. To the D&H, who managed to creep forward $1, he's really kind of tied up. Like, it's not going to get better in terms of runs. I do have a token, so I could screw with someone else's runs, conceivably. Ooh. Or maybe just make a better run. Like if I put a token someplace like here, or here, Canadian National has a token too. If we dot this off and take control of that, something interesting happens. Maybe I'm not a 33 run. What I was going to say is kind of irrelevant. I may have to undo my money. But let's say I buy a token. It's going to be an $80 token. I could run then with a 6 train. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, 4, 5, 6, the double 100. Now I could place this token, but that then blocks off this path, which, I might be able, I'm not going to be able to get through very easily. That blocks off that path for the CNR, which might not be pleasant. But let's see what this comes out as. 180, 210. I could increase that instead of what I did. 210, 250, 350. Yeah, that's better. Okay, let me talk about what I'm going to redo my turn, but let me talk about what I did. I pulled in enough cash, then I looked at what I got. I got tons and tons of shares. Unfortunately, most of them are IPOs, and I only have 300 and something bucks. I need $500 to reach the 8 train, and so one of these at 2, 334, 440. 465, 470, 480. I end up a little short of being able to buy that extra train. But I should be able to do it next turn no matter what with a release. Well, I shouldn't be able to get the trade next turn, but I should be able to release the money, which means I can buy another share as well. But I'm going to undo this, which didn't get me anything, and buy a dot down here and upgrade that. More than that, this was a 36. I was at the 180. This actually gets me just to being able to shift my stock value another 20 bucks up, which gets me a few more bucks from this. It's not enough to do it because I spent 80 bucks, right? I'm definitely not going to have that. 220, 330, 440 gets me not quite there. 700 and something still. But it does mean I have enough cash still, even after that, to buy another share at 220 now, but it's going to go up another 20 bucks before I release it. It's going to take me a couple turns, but I'm going to get that 8 train as well. Let's see, this one's pleasing me a lot in terms of gameplay. So like 1870 has the same, redeeming shares and reissuing them. Facts that it's using more of the 1830 model, which ends up not necessarily helping you because people end up slamming your shares and stuff like that, so you don't actually make the money in that. This actually is doing a better job of generating revenue that's sort of assured, right? So I can see the engineer who doesn't want to be slapped around by somebody's economic manipulation being happier with this. But I'll tell you one thing that makes me happier about it, is that it feels like this game is utilizing the redemption and reissue mechanism without needing the stupidly long tail that 1870 has. I'm not seeing it here. Now in 1870, the reason that stupidly long tail there exists is there's too many trains. There's too many mid-level trains. There's nothing that eats them up. You get rid of a train or so and the game changes completely. But then the redemption and reissue may not, like if you did that, the reissue and redemption might not actually be a useful mechanism anymore. The reason it's a useful mechanism is it lets you buy the biggest train that otherwise doesn't even come out. Like the only way it comes out is because people are playing with those shares during the long tail. And the tail gets extended because a whole bunch of money goes into play for the final permanent train, which I don't remember if it's a diesel in that. I think it is, but it doesn't matter. It's, a big expensive train, at least $1,000, and painful to get. But that ends up cracking some companies and doing all kind of, it creates another train rush beyond the sort of normal one, or there's this long delay within what you might call the train rush, whatever. But it creates this extra phase, and it just makes the game really, really fucking painfully long, which is a shame because it's an interesting game outside of that. I think it was the NYC who played this, which is a horrible play for them. The NYNH doesn't need it. It's got its way through Hartford. The NYC is running 1. Look, I can go 2, 3, 4. I guess I could go here if there's a piece, but I don't think there's a piece that does that shit. But that still doesn't help. That still gets me over here. I could cut through here and back and down and all kind of crap like that. That's not easy. What I really want to do, well, no, this doesn't help me either. Everything goes through this damn city. What damn city is that? Anyway, the problem is I need a run that goes through less cities, not more. And why do I have this token? I'm only running 30. Now, obviously, that's going to be double, but I feel like with this token, I should be able to do something more impressive. I think the NYC's been played poorly. Anyway, the straight across would have been more valuable to me if that's what the NYC did. I'm not going to be able to do that now, but what I can do is I can play this magic piece because I can come up and around, okay? I don't have to actually have the train running that. I just have to be able to run a train of infinite length. Take this. This gets me control that allows me, once I hook this up, and there's only one piece that goes here, to run to here, skipping a city. So I can do 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Eventually you can go 1, 2, 3, right? 4, 5 to Boston, the New York to Boston, on a really light little run, which goes through New Haven. So that's pretty sweet, and I have enough cash to be a real dick and dot this space. Not this one. This one is the important one. This one doesn't control shit. And looks like it's going to get dead-ended, and the D&H is going to be so unhappy. But they didn't want to dot this because of the CPR, or CNR, and now they're like, yeah, now I'm just dicked over doubly instead of singly like I could have done for myself. Even though that still generates a 33 run, I was able to do a little better than last time. There's some upgrades and stuff, I guess, or maybe I missed something. But it's the first turn with the double 5. So we get a bell ringer out of this at 66, and some big money is handed out, spread out all over the fucking place. And that lets him leapfrog the B&M as well. There's nothing I can really do to manipulate with this. This run's going to get better by a fair amount. How much better? You don't know. But this is a key location to shutting other people down, etc. How bad is it for the NYNH? Not bad, because I've got this route instead of that one. Remember, the NYNH and, well, it was the CV, but the NYNH basically has the same thing. This Hartford space is really important, the way the track came out. And it just means that, you know, they're more bulletproof to these kind of attacks. My battery's not charging, this one's dying, I'm in trouble. NYNH lays the track for the NYC, which is more important than I thought. I look at this thing, and it shows one upgrade for this piece. This piece upgrades it too. I don't know, is the 70 anywhere? Like, it's got to show up somewhere. It shows up on these, but I don't think those actually upgrade it. I'm not positive. I don't think they do. Like, something's fucked up. They got the tile upgrades screwed up. Because this maintains this track. Let me see about this other one. This other one works too. It's got this wide curve here and the sharp curve here, so that's okay. But yeah, they're missing an upgrade possibility on there. So somebody could have actually screwed the NYC over. And this, you know, part of the reason I did this was I thought, I looked at this chart instead of just thinking. Pencil things on into glossy paper. I kind of carved it in with a ballpoint because I don't want to go get a Sharpie. It's not optimal, but the 70 should be upgrading that. And pencil won't work on this shit at all. Alright, where am I? I'm almost out of battery, and I'm running the NYNH. I think I counted my run, but I'm not sure. It's a big old 51 run. No money going into the company treasury, unfortunately. Because then eventually I would be able to double it, right? But that's big enough that I can get to the end of the board, and I'm still moving double back here, so I'm keeping up with everyone else. It's just not that impressive given the NYC and given what we know the CV is going to be cranking out. Although the CV is a little bit more limited up here. They have a nice run, but that's starting to get cut apart, and that gets taken, and a chunk gets taken off my run. That's for sure. There's another little rule, which is none of these brown things have more than, I think, 4 entry points, which means if I push through here, I'm not going to come out this way. I'm not going to be able to get a three things going into here, and I'm not going to be able to get here. So this is not an accessible option. I could cut down and get here, but that doesn't help. This is the CNR I'm looking at. That doesn't help the CNR or anybody really. So I'm trying to figure out what's my way across that I can conceivably make. I think probably the best is, well, see, I'd like to do it where I'm controlling this city, right? I need to hit cities with the CNR, not so much with the DNH. But now that I'm blocked off here, I feel like I have to either push down through here, that's going to be hellish, or push up through here, that's not going to be easy. So I'm left with a lot of difficult choices to make. And I don't know which way to go. This one at least doesn't cost me any blasting. Interesting choices again. I count that I'm able to do about 33 a share. I don't think I can do better than that. And that's running through some doinkers here, up and down. Okay, great. If I pay out, that gets me up to there. And I can do the same kind of manipulations as everyone else is getting. I only have 2 shares of this thing. Breaking it out might be worth it. Like, so I could I could swallow 330. I have 5. That would give me enough money to just buy this outright and take a hit and get running earlier in that 60 range where other people are. Which is better? It's an interesting choice. In terms of stock value, obviously, running it longer is worth a lot. But I feel like in terms of being more disruptive, I'm going to do the swallow because I'm in last place as far as I'm concerned with this guy. And by doing the swallow, I get the train quicker. I'm not doing what everybody else is doing. It may not be the wisest move. I don't want to calculate it all out, but it may be the edge that I need to get me into fourth. PNW is left with some interesting track lay issues. My current run, so I mean, there's different runs I can make, but my current run is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Yeah, there's nothing fancy here. I have money for dots if I so desire. So yeah, I don't have to fix anything. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait, no. Yeah, because I'm coming down through here and then up here. I'm not going through this. I'm not coming down into there. That's what was getting me confused. Okay, I'm good. I can try to lay track for the CV, that means. And I don't know that the CV particularly wants anything done for it. It's conceivable that I might want to try to break through up here. I don't know. Track there, which I'm allowed to do because of this. Got to always double check when you're trying to lay track for another company, especially. And you could say, look, this is going to be a hard job, or this is going to be a hard job. But there are a fair amount of companies trying to do this. There may be a couple that are trying to stop it, but not that many. Most players have some desire to improve something. If the CV is trying to cut through, even though it is fairly locked in, well, that's a pretty heady statement. Now the reason they're locked, they want to do it is they kind of want to hit a high run more than anything else. So I don't know. They're kind of being silly, but they're probably not trying to win as much as just get some kind of bragging rights. I don't know. And so the Providence and Worcester pays out at 32, which is the lowest of any company now. You can see an inflation happening. That gets it a double jump, which it will not be able to sustain. But I also play the redeem the shares game. You know, someday I'll get an 8 too if the game lasts long enough. The big question. Big question. Because I see two things that are at risk. One is the steady progression. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more operating rounds or so. Once the CV starts, well, once the CV starts really hitting, that's what we're talking for at. As one limitation. And then the other is the bank itself, which still looks pretty healthy, and there's a lot of 8 trains coming out, so I don't know how quick that's going to crack. 5 operating rounds is a lot of time once you're at this stage in the game, but it still feels fresh because people are still like growing, you know, which is going to put us at. Wait, CNR. Oh, they did their swallow. Yeah, so they have the double eights. That's going to be interesting. So they're going to be hitting in the 60s pretty soon, just like the NYC is. Very, very interesting. All right, we are going to go Betty Bye at this point. I've got 2 batteries charging, 1 uncharged. This one mostly okay. It would be very possible to spread these guys out so they're not in a big stupid stack. The stack is really annoying. It's one of the reasons I don't like wooden pieces, but and I think these kind of charts that are so wide are intended to be used like this rather than in a big stack. But the problem is it gets so crowded right here where we just were, and I don't want to weird myself out. Like I think mentally I'll have trouble handling if this extends right now. So yeah, the design lacks a little. This should be somewhere else. I don't know where. Could be up here, you know. And write New England, 18 New England, on the track. It's not a big deal if you cover shit up, right? Except for if somebody's videoing the game. All right. So yeah, that puts us to the second operating round, and big stuff's happening still. Well, it's early Sunday morning, and I'm feeling well enough, awake enough, all that, and have gotten enough raid done that I actually have a break I have to take. So I'm down here to play. And we got one more operating round here left in this sequence before we go to stock rounds. I don't see a hell of a lot of room for manipulation amongst anyone. Although dumping a company might not seem like that huge a loss in this game, honestly. I could see actually just selling off a presidency if you could do that because, well, I don't know. We're getting close to the certificate limits with some of the people, so what the hell. Someone had asked me how long it's been since I did another train game. Maybe I had made it sound like it was longer than this. I looked it up, and it's been just about a year. It feels like longer, but yeah, it's a long-ass time for me to go without playing any 18XX. All right, let's get started. We still have a miner running. It's hard to remember him. I'm worried I'll skip him, honestly. I have the same kind of trouble with the privates handing out their automatic income or whatever, but he's sitting way over here. I kind of feel like I ought to put him up here each time just as a reminder. It's going to be pretty hard to stop him from connecting in. I built that way, and we'll be able to run right in there. And what can I do once I'm there? Well, I can run from back here if need be, but I can come 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of my hits in some pretty rich area. I do actually need to come down here if I don't cut this, which is kind of a pity because that's a 30 buck, but you know, there's lots of room for improvement on his run, and he's starting to make some really big money. Now the B&A has a fairly bulletproof route. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, that's not it. Is it 1, 2, 3, up, 4, 5, 6. So they're running at their 36. It's pretty solid, where some of the other companies might be going to be falling behind because of dots or whatever. No cash for anything exciting to happen. I started building what I think may be defensive track. I tried to figure out everything that I could. This is what I want to prevent crossing wise, I guess. This looks like the easier crossing as opposed to this one. And then the Central Vermont, which also has mostly bulletproof route, but they do have one problem. They hit this, but they don't really need to. They come up, I believe, this way to get enough, up this way, to get enough cities. Well, if I lose the ability to go through that city, that's 40 buck loss. And there's not really something I can replace it with. I can hit with the doink. So I'm carving up this way to hit Lowell and end up, you know, with another brown city eventually connecting me into Boston there. Which will help this path. Yeah, this is just wrong. Remember when I found that the 70 wasn't being accounted for here? Well, it's over here with the 30 and 31, these tracks. That's not legitimate. Let me find this. So here, you got the wide curve. Oh no, this one does work. This one does work. It is the only upgrade allowable for it, though. I'm going to search through and make sure that I'm not missing something, because I thought some of these worked that way. But apparently not. Yeah, most of them have the curve going, or they all have the curve going in. Contained within the this kind of situation. So that is the only thing, and that has the other piece has the curve within, but also has the curve without, because it's double curved. Okay, so yeah, this is dead. It isn't going to go anywhere. I'm working right now on the D&H, and I guess I'm going to try to break through up here, which I do. You know, it succeeds. It's just, it's going to take a while. So the easiest way would be to go up here into Fitchburg. But that means I'll be hitting 2 cities, 2 locations, either of which can be dotted, before hitting Boston. An alternative is to come this way. And I'm trying to look to see the D&H and the CNR, what their trains are like, what they want to hit. CNR probably is fine hitting 2 cities. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, eventually 6, 7, 8. Looks fine, okay, no matter what. But the D&H has a somewhat more painful run coming out of here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, I have to hit this. That's the problem. 4, and actually I can't build track up here with the D&H. I don't reach up there. Shit. Okay, well, I'll stop thinking about it then. How about that? Interesting. What can that do for me then? Well, I can connect this up so that I can build track up there. The problems with these tracks, and here comes another one, is that they're really good defensive plays. There's not a lot that's useful that can come out of them, and they allow you to block stuff that otherwise would be hard to block. Now, how big a deal is that? I don't know. You know, this used to be a pretty good defensive play too, right? So, adding more pieces that can cause, yeah, so they can make it impossible to get through the track, may not be that big a deal. So, like the fact that this was declared basically by moving straight across. Well, now there's no way through to Fitchburg anymore. I thought the CNR went right after. It doesn't. And the NYC able to block that off, and I haven't done its run yet. And we ran the NYC, which played the defensive play. We got another railroad right afterwards, which would also be interested in defensive plays. They just couldn't see anything. Maybe I want to, maybe I don't. I don't know. I don't see any great reason. Like, I don't see a reason to defend once you get across the boundary. The question is, there's this boundary, and right now it's here, okay? And this city, and this city control the boundary. And if they can break that line, the B&M loses, along with the NYC, loses a competitive advantage, right? The NYNH makes its way through. The B&M, I don't have to worry. The Hudson's not trying to do anything over there. Actually, is it? I don't know. Who knows, right? But anyway. But yeah, the companies that are trying to break through are finding themselves being stymied by the larger number of companies that already have a path, right? The CV has a path. The Providence and Worcester, I don't know that it actually has a path. It's sitting here and can run a tight little 5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. It actually went. Didn't it? 5 up to there. No, this is the same run as the B&M is running. But the B&M had a pile of cash on board and ended up buying an 8 train, which is just going to double its value. So instead of 32, it's going to be making 64 and up there with the NYC. None of that's going to match what the CV is going to be making. It's going to be, what, making 90, right? And that's, it would have been close to 100 if it wasn't, if some of the cuts hadn't happened. Such is life. They're willing to improve things, but the things they want to improve are over here, and there's really not much that can be done. The problem is that the way they want to improve things is remove some dots. More than anything else. They're hitting enough cities, and other cities aren't gonna improve their run too much. They might be able to replace this one or something. I gotta say, I like the way these E-trains work. Hey, you got one of them, and it runs normal value. You get 2 of them, and they run the smaller size run, which is easier to calculate than the big runs, and you just double it. It's usually pretty easy to find yourself one big rich run. Comparing this to, like, you know, I don't know, if there was like 2 real 8 trains, trying to get 2 8 runs to run, it's a headache. And it's really painful. This is a nice, pretty simple way, and it generates the same kind of revenue, if not more, because you're kind of doubling. You're doubling your best run. There's other types of trains. I think E-trains came out in another game where they're just double value, but they're littler trains. They're like a 4 train, like, you know, but they double the value in and of themselves. I like this mechanism. makes you buy a second train to get that full value, but generates routes that are relatively easy to calculate, given how late in the game we are. Weird sort of personal note, for some reason or another, and I don't remember why, when I moved here, not to this house necessarily, I think actually, may have been, I ended up ordering like a pallet of tuna, of canned tuna. I think the feeling was, look, it's hard to get food here. It may have been before we got used to hauling stuff to and from the grocery store. I wanted to see what kind of groceries I could get mail order. And this was like the only thing I could find that I wanted was a fucking like pallet worth of, I mean, not like an industrial pallet or whatever. It's just like a double box full of them. And it was relatively reasonably priced. I think it was about the price that I would pay for tuna. And I'm like, well, at least I won't have to haul tuna. I am finally down to the last couple of cans of that. Which, of course, disturbs me because it's like, one of my great reserves is drying up. All right. I think that puts us on to the NYNH. Making essentially the same runs as before with the Providence, which is running that same route as the B&M is, with pretty much the same dots, right? The only dot it doesn't have is the Boston. But it's a run from New York to Boston with no room to add Portland or whatever. Okay. And it's still redeeming shares, building up for its own. It'll be also getting up to that double if the game lasts long enough. We've got some pretty big piles of cash showing up. Surprisingly, so there's three that I think are really huge. Here, here, and here. This one's not getting that big, but the CV hasn't kicked in yet. Okay. It gets its big run at the beginning of the next operating round. But this one really shocks me. I was not expecting him to be holding his own. And why is it? Well, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Only 10 certificates. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. About the same. 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm not worried about him. 4, 8, 9. You know, so he's on the higher end of the certificates held at the beginning of the end game, and he's got some high valued stuff. I mean, he's got the NYCs and the NYNHs, which are making good money, and of course they get value off of that good money. When you're making good runs for a while, your valuation goes up by 2 each time, instead of some of the games allowed you to come screaming out with like 3 or 4 spaces if you had enough multiples. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Like, there's something very, very cool about, wow, this company really like improved tremendously and just increases in stock value a great deal. It really rewards the save up for a big train per situation. Especially, if you swallow or whatever, it means your stock value goes down. It becomes easier to get those multiples, so it just bounces right back up. Whereas with this, I feel like it's more realistic with this kind of mechanism, where it's like, yeah, you had a good quarter, a really good quarter, but how much, or 10 years, or whatever a turn is supposed to be, but how much does that really reflect the future and whatnot in terms of, what the stockholder concern is. Now, the general stockholders don't know as much as the players do, right? Like, whoever's generating price here does not know the valuation of the companies that the players do, which is a little funky. Like, they're not really making a valuation of the company. They're simply, yeah, it always pays dividends every year. That leaves us with the last one, the Canadian National, which I tried to use before to cut across to Fitchburg. And now it looks like I'm just shit out of luck. I might not. Yep. I think we can't get through. I think that's actually, we're not going to be making the New York-Boston run, which means time to start thinking about what could we do. And I don't know what the answer to that is. So frustrating. I put this piece down and I'm like, oh, it curves that way. Yeah, that doesn't do it. And then I just rotate it and I'm like, oh, but that does. And then I take it away and I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't fit. Or upgrade which fits. But it takes me to some place that's just no good. I can't back up this way. I'm running into another hole. This is one of the more frustrating things on 18XX. And one of the less believable. Like, look, you couldn't lay track wherever the hell you want it, but you could pretty much get from point A to point B with track. So the whole tokens, dotting stuff out, and denying people access to right of ways and whatnot. That is the least realistic aspect of the XX. I like the game it generates, and I mean across the board. Like, that is one of the least realistic. The stock market tries to do something and is unrealistic in it as well. It's where I think the Winsome designs actually really shine. Like, they reach more of a, yeah, you can get wherever you want to go. You don't really control things by stations. If you could build track, you could get there. If you could pay the money for the track and the land and whatnot. But there's other stuff, like building track is free in most XX games and stuff like that. So there's a lot in the XX model that's just not realistic. I don't know, like, I always looked at it and said, oh, I want the stock market from XX and the train and the rail building from Crayon Rails and stuff like that. And honestly, I think the Winsome designs kind of managed to get that better. And it's funny that I like XX better. It really is a case where I like the gameplay of the XX systems, and just have a preference for it over more accurate simulations. And yeah, even at the end, because of the double train, able to match the 68 that the NYC is getting, but it's not pleasant. NYC is sitting on some better dots, but I'm running up and through. There's some room for improvement, not a hell of a lot. I got room for another city, which means that if I can connect this shit up, good stuff happens, sort of, maybe, kind of. Maybe not that good, but right now this was the quickest and bestest that I could do. And I'm hitting one doinker as well. And this might as well be a doinker, right? So that pushes us into the stock round. I'm going to check where I am on raid. I might be wanting to play. Late game takes a while. As the turns start getting slower, people are hunting down, where they can try to break through. Whether they can't, I think I've come to the decision that this is done, but there's that fighting for the track. There's often the calculating the more complex runs and whatnot. I am glad the runs here are not that painful to calculate. That was a happy surprise. Oh, I forgot to give myself money here. It's not going to be enough to redeem a share. I'm going to do, because I don't think there's any harm in it, so I'm going to move this here. At no point except the mergers is the value of these important. I think, well, I don't know. It may have a $90 value at the end of the game, but we'll try to remember that that's the space it's in. It should be pretty easy. You didn't want to buy things cheap. And that way I will remember to move it each time. I think I've been okay, but I'm really worried about it. That I want to do a stock round. So most of the players, everyone except him, has pretty much as much cash as they might need. I think I don't know if they could buy, you know, as many shares of CV as they wanted or whatever, but they're not going to get to, right? So they're going to be trying to fill up their portfolio with the bestest stuff, with a combination of stock value increases possible and run valuation. And we know the CV is that by far, so that's what is going to get scooped up initially. But this guy, he might have to be a little bit more careful. He has 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 shares right now on 5 certificates. Doesn't have a whole hell of a lot of money. Does not. I think everybody's got as much money as they want. Anyway, holding the most valuable shares is definitely worthwhile, unless they get capped in terms of their stock valuation. But if it's the most valuable, it probably will not. I don't think that's possible. So, yeah, you want to hold the most valuable shares anyway. You might be able to make better short-term money off a cheaper share, but then those valuable shares won't be available to you later on. And the other player will still be continuing to generate revenue off them. So I think they're still probably the best purchases, but it's not always absolutely certain. Now that all the CVs have been purchased out, and I struggled with prices because this damn thing confused me. NYCs are gone. They would have been a really good choice. Second highest valuation, second highest valuation, highest valuation, second highest stock runs. I think everything that's gonna be making big double runs has its double trains on it, has its runs reflected. No, not everything. The B&M does not, and the Providence is not going to be getting one right away. But the B&M has not made its big run yet, so it's going to be up with the big boys here. But the CNR made its, yeah. And I don't see piles of money on anything else. The D&H is also going to be releasing shares and getting some money. I don't know if they'll have enough at this point. They're at 240 each. They'll probably be at 280. Yeah, they'll have enough money to buy their second train as well. So they'll be in the mix for higher valued companies. But the real question right now is, do we compare? So D&H is kind of interesting because it has room for growth and is pretty good. So I think that actually is probably one of the better choices to buy. And you might hurry its capability by purchasing their earning shares at 240. So I have to compare what's it making right now. It's making 30. It's going to just go forward one space next turn and probably 2 the next. So it's going to make like 1 space, 2 spaces. It's going to make $70 in share value and call it 45 in earnings. So that's worth like 115. That's the first thing I judge. Okay, well, obviously it's going to make more than the Boston and Albany, which is not going to be making that much in earnings, nor in share value. So we can skip that. But what about the Boston and Maine? Is that a better option? Because there are shares of that available as well. So that's going to be making, I guess, double this. So 64 plus 90. So 150 something. So the B&M is worth more than, in terms of total value, than the D&H. Okay. The NYNH not worth it. It's got no room for growth, nothing. It's stuck at that 51. It's not bad, but Providence and Worcester, again, not interesting. But the last remaining interesting one is the CNR. Now, the CNR is not running all that much, but it's running 68 a share now, right? B&M is running it now as well. And it's not going to make as much, but if you wanted to fill your portfolio out with cheaper stuff, it's not a bad option. It's gonna be producing like the big boys are, but you have a smaller investment. So probably this guy is going to buy a couple of CNRs rather than something else, and he may actually sell off some shares like the NYNH in order to be able to get additional cash for more shares. Although the CNR was valuable for him, I'm over here with him, and all the B&Ms are gone. And now it's time to evaluate for the rich guys what the best share is. Now, we talked about the CNRs, which are going to be running at 68. Actually, I've been undervaluing that, right? 68 and an 80 stock value, so 100, somewhere around 230, a little below 230. But what if I went for the DNH? Well, the DNH is going to make less on stock. NYNH is going to be making less on stock as well. It's only going to be making 60 bucks on stock, and I might not be able to get it there. So that's going to be making about 160. And what did we say for this? Jesus, I don't remember. 140 plus another 80, 220. Yeah, I think the CNRs are still worth it for everyone, simply because of the increased stock valuation that they're going to get, and the fact that you want to lock them in now while there are still some available. Now that those are all sold out, we're over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Room for 3 more shares. Not enough money for 3 more shares. I thought everybody was going to fill out. Okay. So everybody's a little short on cash. Maybe they should have all been buying CNRs. Stupid them. They looked rich, man, but the stock values are so high. So the choice here, I think, is between the DNH with its, we said it was going to be a 45 over 2, so it makes 90 plus 70. It makes 160 over the course of the next round versus, I guess, the NYNH, because the Boston just makes so much less, which will be making 190. So I think the NYNH makes more than the DNH will in the short term. But the DNH is good. You know, if the game lasts a long time, buying shares of DNH is worth more. Right? Of course, if I buy these shares of DNH at 240 each, it may not have enough money. In which case it's a bad buy, right? That's 720. These guys are what? 110 each. So yeah, they have enough stock value to buy it, the train. The question is, how quickly can they buy it? And buying these out doesn't really do it. Like, buying these alone won't do it. And I don't have enough money to guarantee it myself. So I think I want to buy the IPO shares. It costs me the same either way. It's just, what am I giving to the company? You know, am I giving them 110 bucks or 240 bucks? And I see no reason. I think I want to buy DNHs, and I think everybody's going to buy them, because if somebody's buying them, their value goes up significantly. Now, but that actually, my calculations were counting on them being able to buy the train in that first operating round. If they can't buy it in the first operating round, they're not so good. And the NYNHs are better, and there aren't a lot of NYNHs out there. Which is a problem. There's only one. So share-wise, somebody's going to have to buy the DNHs. Fine, I will spring for one. It moves me back down to him. He's got some room. Nobody's got a shit ton of money though. They could raise some more. So like I could sell a Boston and Albany if there was room to sell one, but there's not. I could sell things that maybe aren't that great. The NYCs are definitely great. The NYNHs, well, everything I've got is pretty good. So I think I'm going to actually buy myself an NYNH because I'm not convinced that the DNH is going to make enough money to make its run, to be able to hit its target this time. Now, for a long-term investment, though, the DNH is kind of advantageous. So it's kind of a tricky call, right? The other thing I have to pay attention to is, although this isn't a game where there seems to be a lot of train company raping and dropping it on people, mainly because the companies can run on just a couple of shares, which means that, like, I don't know. There's not big share portfolios when the big churn when the train rush happened and when things are really at their most chaotic in the game. So there's not really much room to hand somebody off something that they really don't want. But you got to kind of look at, hey, what do I have a couple of? What do I have 2 shares of? Like I have 2 shares of NYNH. Is that a good enough stock that it's worth him holding the presidency for? Because he might just drop it. So for example, if anybody had a couple of shares of Boston and Albany, they would own it, right? Because the president's certificate is not worth enough at this point in the game when money's a little short. And yeah, here, have it. Because that's just never going to break this barrier. It's stuck in that position. It's not going to do well. The Providence and Worcester, on the other hand, well, it's going to eventually, I guess, hit itself an 8 train. The DNH is going to have its big double train, but no. So the only company that really looks like it would be dangerous to hold 2 shares as the Boston and Albany. Providence and Worcester might be. It's just not making very much money right now, and the game may not last long enough for it to get to where it is. So a lot of people have extra money. He has $200 left. Nothing to buy for it. Everything's too expensive. Only the CPR is cheap enough to buy, and I didn't manage to get that extra share of it I thought I could. So, yeah, a lot of excess money just because of the high prices. We move to the operating round, and I guess we go play Raid. And the little miner is running, I think, a 320 run now. By cutting across here, I'm able to slap down to New York. Which is pretty impressive. That's gathering up tons of money that, yeah, I mean, there's nothing I can really do with it, except if I have enough cash in here. No, I can't buy a train. Yeah, I'm just stuck. It's just blasting money at best. First couple runs, big companies, big trains, bell ringer at 90. The 68 again for the NYC. The bank is depleting rapidly. Sure, there's a lot of money in here still, but I honestly don't know if it's going to make it through the operating round because it's just draining so fast. And there's no more. There's one more impending $800 infusion. That might be enough to keep it alive. Was looking at the DNH and I was saying, hey, it might not be able to have enough money to release to get the train right away. I forgot about its run. With 6 share or with 5 shares in there, its run was quite hefty. It's up to a 36 now. And that'll be doubling. That'll put it at the second best company in the game, actually. So that's pretty impressive, actually. Uh, the reason is this dot. So why can't the Canadian National do that? No, not quite sure. Not quite sure. Because this was the only dot I was running off of. I think no. I think it's because this is new. The connection going up here is new. Wait, I think I cheated. I do believe I cheated. Uh-oh. Um, the problem is I can't make this transition, in which I was counting, for a 6 train, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm confused. Now I'm really confused. How did I get to 36? 10, 14, 18, 22. I don't know how I got that high. I must have miscounted something. So, the piece of track exists that allows me to do what I thought I was doing, but I think I'm still running under. I know I'm still running under, right? 10, 14, 18, 22, 26. I can get up to 32, so I've got to pull some money from people. Might have to shift which kind of share I'm selling as well. Ended up just a tiny bit under. And actually, I was counting on being able to make that double run, which I can't do, right? Because you buy trains after you make your run. So no matter what, the DNH actually was probably a worse hold than whatever I was comparing it to. I don't remember what I was. The Boston and Albany. Hard to tell. Anyway, its run is 32. I don't know. I thought I was doing really well. It's going to actually come out below the Canadian National, which makes sense. It's running a pair of 8s. After continuing on, the Providence and Worcester has a dot, had money, or has money that it could put in. It's going to end up buying more shares if it can. Doesn't have that much money. Shares are expensive now. But the only real place for a dot is here, and I don't want to do that. That would hurt the CV. And I just don't like that idea. How much would it hurt it? Yeah, it's hard to tell because this could be built. But if that's going to be built, screw it, man, you know? And you can see the state of the bank. Now, there's still, $2,500 just sitting right there. But that would be almost certainly gone through, I think. Yeah, I don't know. It would be a tight run thing. I think it's going to survive based on the purchase of the 8 train, which means we go another full set of operating rounds. Otherwise, it would really suck. I mean, it's not like he's been foregoing cash or anything in order to play with that. And CN is running, yeah. CN is running pretty well. It's able to ooze its money up a little bit by adding that. It's kind of tricky. So if we can break in here, this doesn't quite work. So if we can break in down here, we could hit like something like both of these eventually, which is a 90 instead of a 60. A little bit more money, but call it a 70 because I'm hitting a doinker. I think I better be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, I'm hitting a doinker still, and that's why I have room for a little bit more. So I can pull in another $20, which doubled is 40, can get me up to a 74. And I guess we'll run another one. It's I think Sunday morning. I don't know. I can't keep track of the days anymore. And part of it's because I don't sleep in singular like periods. An example after the Hudson went, and it's running a 32 run, which is what it ran before, with no real need to do anything exciting. Why is it a 32 run? Yeah, that's a good question. That can't be right, can it? It might be a 33 actually. 11. I'm having trouble. 15, 19. 22. No, 32. Okay. 160 into each pot. Yeah, nothing changed. Could something change? Yeah, you know what? Something can change. If I upgrade this and cut through here, that could go up to a 40. Now, after I did that, I spilled out the hundreds for everyone. Everyone's got one, except him. He has two. And sure, there's these two guys are, a little closer, but we're really seeing the impact of that miner, and able to pump $160 into your pocket every turn. Now, single share of something else, is at best going to be pumping 90 into your pocket, right? Plus, though, another 70. So it's performing as well as a share of Central Vermont on its own. And Central Vermont is the best company in the game. So, take that as you will. And the president has 4 shares of Central Vermont, and he only has 1 Hudson. But it does mean that by engineering keeping one, he managed to get at least a single copy of something that's as good as anything else in the game on a per turn total revenue or whatever. And I don't know what the fuck I'm doing here. I've got them up at 68. I don't think they make that. That would be a 34 run. I think I'm counting an extra city in, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gets me to 130, 210, 310. 310 doubled is only 62. I'm going to allow that extra money cheat to happen, but I'm pretty sure everybody pulled a little bit too much for the NYC last time. Making the same damn mistake. They can make it from here. 14, 21, 24, 34, 68. I miss that I have this dot. It doesn't look integral to the company. All right. No, there was something else I was supposed to tell you. I've unstacked these now that they're kind of well beyond the par value area of the board. I really wish these were square or something. I don't know. White wouldn't be enough. I would still be getting confused. Maybe not as much, but I would still be kind of confused by it. The D&H throws a big chunk of cash in. Is it enough to keep things alive? Probably. But it's kind of... I just don't think there are that many big runs coming up here. Get down to the NYNH, we got weird shit going on, right? So like the Boston and Maine is passing other people on the track because of the, higher income that it's able to make. NYNH though is down to only moving forward once per run, which it's just kind of neat watching the ordering shift just due to sheer profitability. Here we come to a tough decision. The Providence and Worcester had enough money by releasing 2 of their full value shares. They could only release 2 shares, right? To get themselves close to the train, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, they've got the money for the train. But here's the thing: that money came from the bank. If the last company were running significantly higher, I mean, it's going to take $700. Is there $500 in here? I think so. I could count it and make sure. Let's see. 1, 2. 3. Yeah. There's $500 in there. So that's $700 that the CNR pulls out of the bank. That is going to cover all the blues and greens. We're going to be down to 5s and 1s, which means next time the bank is going to break. In fact, it might even break during the stock round if somebody sells something expensive all at once. I don't think that's likely to happen. There aren't many attractive things out there. The D&Hs are going to be kind of more attractive, though. They're going to be up at 64. But the problem is, the things you'd want to get rid of, the Boston and Albany's, they're filled up. The Providence and Worcester, that's not going to get a full double run both times. So, there's just not that much available to buy. There's the D&Hs and there's the P&Ws. And everything else is sold out already. It seems like the certificate limit allows you to grab like most of the shares in the game. For the CNR, its run is complicated because it's got a big 8 going that's not really able to hit the good route, right? It's blocked off here. It's blocked off on this line. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and a doink. But can I hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and a doink? Can I hit another thing? Or does it make more sense to try and cut into Boston up this way? There is still a way down. It's probably too late to get that. But how could I hit another town? Let's make sure my money is what I think it is. 170, 210, 250, 290, 350. Yeah, that's my 70 run. Actually, it's a 72 now because this got upgraded and I'm hitting a doink. What could I conceivably add to my run? Well, I could like cut down here, but then it would take another piece here. It looks like it's going to take as long a time to hook up other stuff. I might as well try for this. And moving into the stock round, that's the bank. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna. Do I want to do this stock round? The stock round's mainly mechanical. Like, I'm awake enough. I feel like I'm a little clumsy and whatnot, mentally. I really should have gone like prepared to go shopping, but it's hot already. Like, it gets hot here in the morning, not in Eugene as a whole. It gets hot here in the morning, like just because the sun hits the front of my house and whatnot. And it feels so weird to me because the actual temperature is probably in like the mid 70s. And if I went walking I'd get back before it gets stupidly hot. I did pull some burger down, my last burger, maybe ever, from the freezer. So, I mean, like, I have food, and if I run, like, I'm low on eggs, I'm low on my normal sandwich stuff and stuff, but it could definitely extend things by running to the market of no choice. All right, let's do the stock round, whatever. The thing I've always found kind of weird is that company valuations. So, like, there's different ways to look at how a valuation for shares should be. Some of it's price to earnings, whatever. Some of it's the actual resources. This doesn't tend to affect the actual stock value, but the actual resources that a company has is part of its value, right? It generally doesn't get, generally people are going with price to earnings, but having significant capital value is in and of itself a worth. But the thing that I'm thinking is the miners, they're either worthless or they stay at the same value they always were. When the reality of the matter is, if they were to release as a new corporation, it would be a valuable commodity. It wouldn't IPO at whatever the values are and whatever. And again, I'm looking at the economic model and everything, and now I'm toying. I don't know. I seem to be the last few months I've been toying around with various game design ideas in my head, not doing anything with them. But I'm again playing around with the idea of the economic model and trying to create, the merger of 18XX and Silverton and maybe Crayon Rails and whatnot, that I really think, could exist. A very detailed game, but one that handles, probably Silverton's probably the wrong choice. Lord Sierra Madre is probably the closer one, but something that handles, transportation, manufacturing, mining, Minnesota, and the stock market and everything else very, very well. Everything that I've seen simplifies, right? XX is a simplification. And I'm looking for that, true economic model, and one where the stock market actually operates the way the stock market would. But, there's problems because I think about, I can't remember the name of the game even now. It was a TSR game. Yeah, Maxi Bourse. Maxi Bourse has this, hey look, the stock market, the way it really works is somebody makes an offer to buy something, and the price they're offering to buy at, if they make the trade, if they're able to make the trade, is what determines what the price is. So, and the same with sales. Somebody makes an offer to sell something at a certain price, and basically the last trade that was made. Now, what that doesn't take into account, sure, the players are the big players in in whatever market you're talking about, but they're not the only ones who are influencing prices, and that's what 18XX kind of tries to do, is to model the effect of external customers. But if all the shares are in player hands, which shouldn't even be allowed, then, within a publicly traded company, it really just shouldn't happen. But if all the shares are in players' hands, then you're starting to talk about, well, what is the value? Who knows? You could offer to buy at any price and might not be able to get a market, happening and whatnot. I have no idea. This guy actually has a full portfolio because of the Hudson. He's at 13. And this is a tough call, you know. What is most valuable? Is the D&H? So first of all, these two companies are not going to be able to go beyond the 500, right? So the CV, yeah, this is the last round either way. We're going to hit the 500 this round. The CV is going to be running, actually, yeah, it's going to be running here and then here because it's not quite high enough to exceed, even if it wanted to. The NYC is running at 68. It's going to only go forward 2. Whereas other companies might go forward more. So, for example, the D&H is going to be running at 64. It's only going to get it to here. It's not going to get a double payout there. CNRs are interesting, but they're sold out. I'm trying to decide what to buy. This guy bought a D&H. I'm trying to look at my shares and say, hey, is there something I want to ditch for something else because it's got more room? But honestly, the CV is going to make the most stock gain that it can, $120 plus the highest revenue. So it is still the best stock in the game. Is there something else that might be worth dumping? Is it worth dumping a B&M? Well, that would drop the price of the B&M. That would not be wise. You don't want to sell as the president unless you know what you're doing, right? Like in this case, I would be losing money. Is the NYNH as good as the D&H? Probably not. So I'll probably sell one of those and just try to, you know, shift my holdings to slightly better stuff. He also is at limit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I didn't think people were at limit. He's at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah. So that's why he's doing so well, and why both of them are doing relatively well. I mean, he's obviously ahead right now in terms of cash and probably other things. But why he had so much cash accumulate is he also had a full portfolio where nobody else did, just the two of them. Over to him, he has to make his decisions. Quick calculation shows the NYNH is still going to be a better buy or a better possession than the Providence and Worcester. So I picked one of them up. So I'm filling out my portfolio. I got to be careful that nobody buys my company out from under me, because this is an extra certificate and it's important now, you know. But I can always dump the NYNH. I don't think he has anything he wants to do, so he gets the whale, and I gotta. Well, see, that thing is, it turns red, it turns green, I gotta go fiddle with it. Now, with such a shallow portfolio, this guy is in an interesting position where maybe he wants Providence and Worcesters. They're $40 less, and I don't know, you know, how many shares. I have 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8. I can buy 5 more shares. It's not going to make much difference, all right? 240 times 5 is going to cost me $1,200. I don't have that. So then the question becomes, does that NYNH cost me a share that I could otherwise get? Because I'm going to be buying the majority of the shares that are out. Well, let me figure that out. So I have 1,110. And we divide that by 240. Did we do this right? That's not right. 1,110 divided by 240 is some 4.5. There's enough overage there that I think I can afford the NYNH. I could calculate it out more precisely, but I'm pretty sure by estimation that this works. And we get to this guy. Now, he could make a challenge for the Providence and Worcester, but it would mean dumping shares and basically these two players reducing their standing vis-a-vis other players. Because if I sell something off to buy a Providence and Worcester, he'll do the same. And basically just reducing our net worth. So we're passing all the way around at this point. As long as he doesn't buy a second share, it's okay. Oh, he's got to worry anyway. That guy's got 2 shares and he'll buy a third. So I gotta play with my stock value anyway. It's continued on. So he's at 40%. He's at 30. Now, conceivably, I could sell a New York, New Haven. Basically, I don't have enough cash to buy anything, right? The only things that are available are the Providence and the NYNH. I could sell an NYNH, buy another Providence and Worcester, and end up forcing him to do another. But I think it's worth more to me to sell a Providence and Worcester, use the extra cash to buy an NYNH. I've already forced him into an uglier position, and now I can start divesting myself of those shares that are not as good and pick up the things that I forced out of him, basically. Everybody's full up except this guy. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm 1 certificate short, which isn't bad. I've got 2 companies. Not everyone has 2. Well, this guy doesn't have 2. So, yeah. Everyone else has 2 if you count the minor, which I think is worth counting. It's certainly as good as, you know, some of these people were holding on to for a long time a single president's certificate of something and just holding it for the game. Would it have been worth dumping Boston and Albany's? If there was something really great to buy, maybe, but they're not that bad. They're just worse than everything else. And that's because everything else is really, really ritzy. Everything else is sitting on either 2 trains or the NYNH, a pretty damn good 8 train run. So, yeah. All right. That's going to put us to the first operating round. I mean, the game's over, so I don't think I should load this up. I think we'll just continue through with this video. Again, I think the people who are watching this are pretty dedicated, right? Or else, I don't know. I don't know how to predict people, right? Like, some people will look and they'll say, it's an hour. It's a 3-hour video. I'll watch 20 minutes of it, and then they stop, right? And if I produced like all 20-minute videos, they'd watch all of them. And I'm not sure I understand, because I know how I operate with videos. If I've got a long video, I just keep I keep going back to it and watching parts of it. But I'm sure there are some people who watch a bit of it. It would make more sense to me to jump around, if that's the case. And maybe they do that, but maybe they would watch if every single video was a 20-minute video. I don't know. Anyway, that ain't gonna happen. So that's gonna put us at the beginning of the operating round. I'm gonna call it a morning. So payouts, first of all, from the Hudson and then the top 2 companies. I've got $272 I got to pull out of here. I might have that in the bank, but then the B&M goes. It's going to run for another $600. I don't have that in there. So the bank is officially broken before the Providence and Worcester gets to spend any money. And wow, the B&H has a shit ton, with nothing it can do with it. This actually would have been an opportunity, had I been thinking maybe more clearly, to try to start a new miner, but it probably would have lost money given that this is the last operating round or last set of operating rounds in the game. Basically, I would have stripped his run in half at this point. Why is he still? He's still only at 32. He still hasn't made his run. Right. So he'd be making a shit ton. I don't know. Yeah, all this money came in after I got the second train. I guess. I don't know. Anyway. Even if that money was in the bank, that money doesn't help anyone win. Even if that money is in the bank, and I don't think it's supposed to be. I think I paid the D&H train, and that's the second tranche of shares that were bought out. Even if it was in the bank would still break before we get down to the Providence and Worcester. If there had been a miner in the game, one of these trains could be bought from the miner, and this might have made things last longer. It would have been the right move to make, not knowing, like, if the bank was just a little bit fuller, right? Because he doesn't go that far down. But, yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that extra money in, make some change. I owe like $272 over here. I've opened up both my, I have two of these piles. 18OE forced me to open both of them. Because there's so many companies, I needed the extra small denominations. But if you just if you just had a game that had a bigger bank, you could go from these being 500s to being 1000s, and you expand your bank quite a bit all at once. Before I buy that train for the Providence, I just did their run at 32, the standard run, but I realized this guy had a stupid Providence in his hand. He could have ditched one of them and bought an NYNH&H. Maybe not, because I think this guy was loosening them from here, so they would drop from there, come around, he'd pick one up, there wouldn't be one, then another one would have to, no, there were a couple of them there at once, because he built up to 3 Providence in Rhode Island, and Worcester's, I'm sorry, I see Worcester, or Worcester. You can see why, though. Worcester. Of course it ends up getting shortened, or strength. Anyway, whatever we're talking about here. But 2 had dropped, so he would have actually had an opportunity to drop a Providence and grab himself one of the slightly more valuable shares. So if he ends up missing by a couple bucks, that's what did it. I don't think that's going to be the case, though. I think first is here, very clearly. We'll see with the stock valuations, because the CV is going to be hitting 500. This guy has better stock valuation, I guess. It's hard to tell, because there's like lower valued stuff in there too, like the Providence and Worcester. And we end the operating round with the Canadian National making its normal 72, but they have started working on this, which I couldn't do. Couldn't do that yet. Nope. I gotta get the brown there first. With the hope of long-term gain. I could have made an extra couple of bucks by shooting into here. Right? Well, it's not that easy, right? Like, I could cut into here or down here, but then I'd have to cut up to here as well. And it's actually not clear. I don't think I actually do make... Yeah, I do make an extra few bucks that way because I'm hitting a doink as it is. So I'd make an extra 6 a share, which is actually a pretty good amount of money. Maybe it's worth doing instead. Because this seems like, at best, I hit here and have a more complex route. Yeah, let me revalue my route. Oh, because the thing is, I'm comparing this to this plus a doinker, which is actually only going to be 20 extra or 2 extra bucks on the payouts, but doubled because of the double train, so 4. But it takes me 2 track lays to do that. So I think working with someone here, we actually have an opportunity. I'm not going to win anyway, so let's go for the best run we can with this company. This is something I consider alternative minor victory conditions, right? Like, look, I know I'm coming in last in the game overall. I'm not going to be able to change that at all. Rather than optimizing my revenue, which kind of matches with the normal victory conditions, I've got, or not revenue, my total worth, I might as well look at, let's see how good I can make my company. You know, just sort of this kind of random thing, doesn't fit in with anything, and I think it's perfectly valid and reasonable for somebody to have goals that are interesting and, you know, that don't absolutely align with the normal victory conditions, and don't consider the fact that they're pursuing this to be anything in the form of king making or anything like that. I've seen that, stated. Oh, you're just helping them win. No, I've got my own little goal here, and screw you, man. And I'm gonna have my fun while I can, and I don't really care who wins. I'm not trying to make someone win. It's a little different where you're actually doing king making, and even that I don't mind as long as the reasons for it are within the game. Like, I think it's unreasonable to say, well, I like Bill better than Bob. You're gonna make Bill win. But on the other hand, I think it's perfectly fair to say, Bob screwed me over 3 times in this game. I'm going to make sure he doesn't win. Anyway. Obviously, if you were playing with some sort of metagame in place, for example, let's say you were gambling on a game of 1830, a penny a point or something like that, or even at a tournament or something, you might have to take that into account as well in terms of how reasonable it is. But in terms of it's just a single game, look, I think anything within that game is sort of fair game towards how you play it. And honestly, I feel like within a tournament, if you've screwed somebody over in the course of the game and they get a little bit of payback on you, even though it ends up being kind of a king-making move, you deserved it, man. You deserved it. So I had to check the current victory conditions, or the victory conditions for hitting 500, because I just did. And they are a little different, but they're not immediate. Some games have it end immediately when a company hits 500, which is kind of cool because it makes it a real sort of double bonus. You go first, you run, and then, no one else gets to run, so you get a bonus run on everyone else. This one, though, you get to play out the whole operating round, but not the whole set of operating rounds. So, like, a bank breaking is the whole set. It's just kind of funky. Like, different games take it differently. I kind of like the you hit 500, you get this bonus run off of it essentially. I think in my earlier XX videos, my much earlier ones, I did what I used to always do, which is spreadsheet out the last operating round or so. If there's nothing's going to change, just write down the values. Once the bank's broken and you no longer have to keep track of how much is in there, just, keep track on paper how much money you've made. For some reason, I'm not doing that this time. I don't know why. Yeah, I can't think of a good reason, except I'm not. And the Canadian National with just one more track play. So they were able to hook up the New York-Boston run that they wanted to do. About as much effort as it would have been to add just, I don't know, $20 to their run. Well, 40. They ended up jumping it up to an 82, so about $80. So about double the value by getting themselves up into Boston here. And there's improvement. This can improve. It's not going to happen, but because this is the last round. And they could actually, if they hook this up, they could replace this with that. So that's another buck there. So we could conceivably get another $6 to the run, bringing it up to an 88. And the Providence and Worcester finally gets its big run. It's not able to use any of that new track or anything funky. It's just running a pair of 5s essentially, even though it bought an 8. But it gets it up to a 64, putting it in the healthy place. The only railway to be left behind income-wise is the Boston and Albany, which had no cash on hand to start leveraging the shares that were there. It's kind of a weird situation. Like, I guess you could half swallow or something, and he could have made it so that he could eventually bootstrap himself up to having a couple of trains. That seems like an extreme case, In an equally poor situation, the Providence and Worcester, with some shares, was able to move its way up towards. Actually, it had quite a few shares on board. It still has IPOs in there, for example. It would have been able to bootstrap itself, so maybe it got one big run or something, but it's not worth losing money in the mid-game or whatever. And there, one of my lights is going. Speaking of things that are going, my hose, I now have to turn off the water going to it because it's leaking at the handle. I've replaced the handle once already. The other one, I couldn't get to. It stopped working, essentially. It stopped having multiple functions and whatnot. It just sort of drooled out the front. It's like, wow, this isn't very helpful. Yeah, basically I couldn't get it. No, what happened was the handle. I mean, I could get it so it was just drooling out the front. I couldn't get it to completely shut off. So the handle was basically stuck in an on position without being depressed or anything. And that's a matter, there's a screw that changes that. But it only has so much leeway, and it wasn't in there. This is the first time I've had this happen. I don't know what happened. It just happened today. It just started leaking, and I can't tighten it enough to form a complete seal. There's probably a piece of rubber or something in there, a gasket or something that's torn. It's not a big deal. So that puts us at the end of the situation. And now I spreadsheet out the final values. Oh yeah, I know what I wanted to say. Instead of flipping counters slowly, trying to think of talking. We ran the bank out pretty hard. You can see a bunch of 5s there. Would have made sense to spreadsheet this game. The reason is the very high payouts. Normally this doesn't happen. Like, the bank doesn't break, and then I pull in a couple $1,000 more, and then it breaks some more. Like, it's pretty close to breaking at this point. So this would actually have been a good game to choose to just spreadsheet the entire end of it. All right, now what I do is I calculate the value of the stocks and the cash on hand, and that's all I worry about. I don't, like, I used to have three slots: the last round of payouts, the stock value, and the total cash on hand. And it always felt kind of weird to me, because it's like, look, why am I just doing the last round of payouts? It should be the last couple rounds. But sometimes you need cash to be able to buy a train or something like that. Sometimes you do need to actually pay the money out in that final operating round, especially if somebody's like teetering. Nobody was here. I think this is still worth 90. I gotta look that up, but that's about it. If you're holding a minor at the end of the game, it's worth twice its value. That makes sense. That's what you paid for it. You paid twice the valuation space. That valuation space is used, like, it's weird, right? It's used to determine the valuation of mergers. Therefore, it's set at that price, and that gives it a once public corporations come out. Well, no, I was going to say once the publics come out, they should go before the miners, but they don't. The miners still jump ahead of them. So I'm not quite sure why the decision was made that way. Might make sense. I don't know. I guess it makes calculations for a merger easier. Or something. Cash is the easiest thing to just kind of observe and see. And like we thought, there's a big advance here. Everyone else, pretty much the same, except for this guy, who of course was well under portfolio, or, late into the game. So we expected his cash to be low. But yeah, this is a big $600 bonus. But what's kind of exciting is this is going to run to a close race, because his stock value is in line with these two guys' stock values. But these two each have much, much higher stock values at 59 and 60. Now, player 1 has clearly beaten player 5 in both categories. So player 5 at best is going to get second place. But there is a question between player 1 and player 2. I look at these values and I'm like, 600 difference here, 600 difference there, and change. So we got to come down to the actual final calculations here. Yeah, it's something of a squeaker. When it's less than $100 difference between the top two places, it's a close game. Turns out his cash value exceeded the stock difference by a little bit. And so we got first, second, third, and obviously last. We won't talk about fourth. One thing you'll notice, these numbers are huge. And they're huge for a couple of reasons. One, the runs are so damn big that a lot of cash came out after the... So even though the bank's the same size, $12,000, right? And that creates a certain amount of variance in every game. But the run itself, or the runs themselves, ended up depleting the bank, in the course of like 2 operating rounds, 1 operating round. I don't know. It felt like a lot went away real fast. At least the bank minus the 500s. Anyway. Because we threw all those extra 500s in, and in 1 operating round, the bank was depleted again, right? But also, the stock market goes up to 500. And we made it up there. In a lot of games, you don't make it up. The game doesn't end due to this one, it ended due to the bank breaking and somebody hitting 500. But in a lot of games, it's hard to reach that top value, even if they have a chart like this, I found. This one, it was remarkably easy. Like, everybody's clustered in the high valuations, and that's because Again, the big runs with the double movement on big runs, yeah, that pumped the values up, even though they were kind of languid early, in the mid game. It didn't feel like anybody was making a lot of stock value, but everybody kind of made stock value at the end. And I do see, the designer put out, yeah, your goal in the game is to have a couple of 80s at the end of the game or whatever. Well, but at least a couple of the permanent trains, and it's not sort of a pipe dream like it is in a lot of games. It's pretty easy to capitalize your companies so that they can get there. The only company that could have gotten there by bootstrapping, the way I said, it's really just a matter of they ended up blowing their wad on the first permanent train they could get, and then not having shares and whatnot, having released their shares and everything, and just not having the excess money left over to buy that second train. And it feels a little weird to have a game where it's not just an aspirational goal, but it feels like it's kind of necessary to get yourself to those two trains. Now, obviously, look, this guy didn't manage to do it. He's the guy who... No, this is the guy who lost a minor straight up. And that put him in fourth. This guy had to pay out of pocket a fair amount of cash. That takes away your investment capability. He ended up with two great companies, I don't know how great the Delaware and Hudson is. But one great company and one very decent company, okay? But he spent too much of his investment capital because he mismanaged his train situation, misjudged the rush, whatever. Got unlucky in the chaos of the rush. It's hard. There's a lot of different ways you can put it. Yeah, but overall, I definitely had fun playing this. I don't think it's just because, I haven't played an XX in a while. I think the gameplay in this one is actually excellent. But that was achieved by taking the system and making changes to manage a certain type of gameplay. And it's not necessarily the gameplay that I like the most. You're not seeing a lot of, you're seeing a lot of chaos at certain points in the game, but you're not seeing a lot of sort of significantly malicious, mendacious behavior. Not a lot of companies getting raped, anything like that. There are, I'm sure, opportunities for it, but this seems like one of the friendlier games in terms of, sure, you still get hosed by the train rush or whatever, but people aren't really dicking you over too much. They are on the track. All right, so that's it. We're going to send this one up, and I'll be around for an attempt at a more detailed review in a bit.